Citizens tried to exercise their constitutional rights and were still denied the ability to elect their leaders. Under the watch of the now former Secretary of State, democracy failed Georgia. Georgians of every political party, every race, every region, again. You see, the incompetence and mismanagement we witnessed in this election had been on display months before in the Republican state legislative primary of Dan Gassaway. Counties under the direction of the Secretary of State issued flawed ballots, and not for the first time, and not just in that district. But this time, the mistakes clearly altered the outcome. Representative Gassaway, a Republican in a heavily Republican district, had to go to court to force a fair fight. And therefore, on December 4th, tucked between the runoffs for Secretary of State and the Public Service Commission, for one community, there will be justice in the process. Win or lose, the people in his district will finally have a say. Many of the same Republicans cheered on Representative Gassaway when he filed his lawsuit. But the same ones have grumbled about the time we have taken to gain a remedy for fellow Georgians who faced a dizzying array of bad action, misinformation, and gut-wrenching hardship. But we are a mighty nation because embedded in our national experiment is the chance to fix what is broken, to call out what has faltered, to demand fairness wherever it can be found. Which is why on election night, I declare that our fight to count every vote is not about me. It is about us. It is about the democracy that we share and our responsibility to preserve our way of life. Our democracy. Because voting is not a right for some. It is a right for all, and it is not a privilege. I stand here today as witness to that truth. This election is about all of us, as is the resolution of this moment. I acknowledge that former Secretary of State Brian Kemp will be certified as the victor in the 2018 gubernatorial election. But to watch an elected official who claims to represent the people in this state baldly pin his hopes for election on the suppression of the people's democratic right to vote has been truly appalling. So let's be clear. This is not a speech of concession. Because concession means to acknowledge an action is right, true, or proper. As a woman of conscience and faith, I cannot concede that. But my assessment is the law currently allows no further viable remedy. Now, I could certainly bring a new case to keep this one contest alive, but I don't want to hold public office if I need to scheme my way into the post. Because the title of governor isn't nearly as important as our shared title, voters. And that is why we fight on, and why I want to say thank you. Thank you to those of you who organized your communities and shattered records. More than 1.9 million voters who stood up in this midterm for protecting our public schools, for continuing criminal justice reform, for Medicaid expansion, and for real economic mobility for all of our counties. We won state house races and Senate races, a new seat in Congress, and we put America on notice that change is not coming to Georgia, it has arrived, and you made it so. But those who feared change pushed back. And so we waited for the whole truth of this election, good and evil. We waited for it to come forth. So thank you to those of you who shared your stories, for the tens of thousands of calls into our voter protection line. Thank you for volunteering your hours after the polls closed and for the last 10 days, for driving to all 159 counties and hearing the concerns of Georgia citizens through tears and frustration and disappointment. Because you see, Georgia still has a decision to make about who we will be in the next election, and the one after that, and the one after that. So we have used this election and its aftermath to diagnose what has been broken in our process. Make no mistake, the former Secretary of State was deliberate and intentional in his actions. I know that 8 years of systemic disenfranchisement, disinvestment, and incompetence had its desired effect on the electoral process in Georgia. I also know that we live in a nation where 4 federal judges were necessary to force the counting of the ballots cast in the face of Brian Kemp's opposition to and disregard for their lawful consideration. I know that millions of Georgians, of Americans, of goodwill, and various partisan beliefs. They are enraged by these truths. Now, in response, you may seek to vent your anger, or worse, to turn away from politics, because it can be as rotten and rigged as you've always believed. But I implore each of you not to give in to that anger or apathy, but instead turn to action. Because the antidote to injustice is progress. The cure to this malpractice is a fight for fairness in every election held, in every law passed, in every decision made.